was heavy on the heart when you want to tell something about yourself. You know, it's quite heavy. And looking back on my... Why is this so fucking difficult? This is a story about just how innocent and vulnerable children really are. Now, it's not a story about fear or anything, like, there's no worry, not for you to worry about or anything. It's but because I wasn't scared. You know, and although I don't think my grandpa would have said the same about this particular day that I'm about to tell you about. I was 3 years old back in this story, right? At first I thought I was 5, but then my mother was like, no, you're 3. It's like, right, okay, don't argue. Just go with it. I was 3 years old, right? So my grandpa would always do things with me. You know, take me to the beach, the parks, fairgrounds, anything. We did things together, right? And on this particular day, like when I was 3 years old, is when we were in a place called Ayrshire here in Scotland, right? And it's a nice place, nice beach, nice town, play parks, arcades and things like that, right? But I can remember on this particular day, we were getting ready to get the train back to Glasgow to get back home. And I could remember we were walking by this toy shop, and I could remember seeing there was like an action figure of Superman up at the window. And I just remember wanting it. I was like, yes! Back in the 80s there was a Superman toy, you know. And I could just remember wanting it. I could remember going into the shop, and I don't know the reason why, but I could just remember that I couldn't get the toy. For whatever reason, I don't know, can't remember. And I was bummed about it. I wasn't like sick, I wasn't throwing a temper tantrum or anything like that. But I could just remember that I wasn't able to get it. So my grandpa stayed in and spoke to the person behind the counter. And I walked outside and stood in front of the window to look at this toy that I couldn't get. And it was just that feeling, just not being able to get it. Just kept looking at it and looking at it, just wanting it. And the next thing that I remember is my hand was up like that. Somebody had my hand, and I just remember walking. You know, that way when you're looking down at your feet, you just see each step you take and you're like, couldn't get the toy. That's what it was like. But then all I could remember hearing was, "Paul!" And I turned round and I could remember my grandpa. I don't know if I could describe the look that he had in his face, but it was horror, shock. I don't know, but something wasn't right? And I could just remember him coming down, trying to run down to try and come and get me. You know, he had bad legs. He was a heavy smoker, and that, you know, affects circulation and poor. His knees, his legs were effed up, put it that way, right? But he did his best. He came after me, right? And I could just remember him holding me against him. You know, safety, comfort, like, yeah, right? And I just remember I was oblivious. I was okay. But because of, again, it's no shit, I could just remember him, the reaction on his face. At the time, I couldn't put it into words, but I could just remember that something's not quite right. And then the next thing that I remember is, I could remember sitting in the train, up in the seat, just swinging my feet. I couldn't get the toy. That's all I could think about. But at the same time, as well, I sensed that something wasn't quite right. Again, I didn't know how to put it into words. And then I could remember, this was a good few years after, I could remember things coming up on the news, and my mother had asked me if I could remember about that day, and yeah, I could. And I'm just telling her exactly what I'm saying here to you. And I could just remember my mother saying that, or the day that your grandpa brought you back, and he told me what happened, I was fuming, I was livid with him and all that kind of thing. And she says that if anything were to ever have happened to me, she would never have forgiven him, which is perfectly understandable. You know, a mother or a parent, you know, it'd be understandable for that. But still, hearing her say that is quite kind of. Again, it's understandable, right? But at the same time, you know, my grandpa was like my best bud. You know, we did things all the time together. You know, and that was my mother's version of it, what she could remember. And then I could also remember actually asking my grandpa about it. This was before my mother asked me if I could remember. I could remember asking him, I think it was 8, maybe 9, something like that. I wouldn't say that he was completely like dismissive or like, deflecting, but I could just tell that he just didn't want to talk about it. But he had said to me that he could remember going in to the shop and he could just remember looking that I wasn't there, come running out, and he said luckily enough that apparently I was still in sight, that he could see me in the distance, and they come after me and shouted on me. But the person, apparently this person that had my hand, he didn't, or whoever they were, didn't turn around to say something like, oh, is this your son, or whatever. Nothing like that. He just kept going. And that's all really that I've got from that story, from what I can remember, from what my mother had said, and from my grandpa's version of it. Again, they weren't always very expressive or very communicative of about what happened that day. But can I say that what have I learned from that day? I was 3 years old and I'm 42 now. What have I learned? That just how completely children have trust in the world around them. Now, this is just what I'm interpreting as, right? It's just, go with me, right? Is the reason why I say that is I didn't know I was in any danger. I didn't even realise anything was wrong. You know, because where I grew up, you know, that everybody knew everybody. You know, so it was like you could walk outside, be fine. Obviously, strange environment, not knowing anything. Now, I just want to say that I don't even know who the person was, what they looked like. I mean, if I had to walk by them today, I wouldn't know them, right? And I do not know what their intentions were either, right? I'm just telling you this as I remember it. And that I am just grateful that my grandpa noticed that I was gone, came after me, and brought me home. That's really it in a nutshell, you know. And I just want to, you know, thank you for staying this long, for listening. And if this video has actually means something to you or has meant something to you in any way, you're always welcome here.